we'll see how this goes, and if people nostalgia hits, and if they do, I'll give you their other big one, which is "Mirror in the Bathroom," which I think is a great song. Really
Okay.
good sax in it as well. It's more sort of Scary based.
I'm sold. I hope it does well then, because I'd gladly check these guys out some more. I mean, I'll go back and listen to this song
Yeah,
undoubtedly.
and there's another song that is "Stand Down, Margaret." I wonder who that's about. Um,
Hmm. Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Audio Files. I'm Andy the American, and over there is John the Brit. And what we do is get together and exchange music with one another and then discuss it pretty thoroughly thereafter. So, John, you're going to be up on offer today, giving me something to go check out. What will it be, sir?
so the band is called The Beat, and they're also called The English Beat, which I
Yeah.
will get into. And the song is called "Psychedelic Rockers" (brackets Dub Visa in brackets)
Okay.
12-inch. There you go.
You don't need to show off, John. All right, great. Well, I recall us talking about this band. I recall even hearing of the English Beat before. It's interesting to know that at some point it sounds like their name changed for whatever reason. I'm sure you'll go over it when I return. But let me go off, give this thing a spinaroo, and then come back and let you know what I thought.
Original derivative sounds, girl. We psychedelic rockers. Oh Lord. Oh oh.
It starts off with a little bit of that like palm muted kind of guitar, and from there you don't really know where it's going to go. And I didn't, for those first just couple of seconds, think that we were going to end up kind of here, which is this kind of dub reggae kind of thing. And the reggae is really coming from the singer's delivery, and I'm not really catching much of what he's saying here, but I do love how right out of the gate, for even if it was just for a couple seconds, my expectations were kind of subverted, or maybe kind of turned on their head a bit. But yeah, this is this interesting sort of pulsating kind of sound we've got going on here in the early days. So let's see where it goes from here. That bass is nice.
Psychedelic crackers. Psychedelic
Of course, the first bit of lyrics that I catch is the title of the track itself.
psychedelic crackers.
Oh, that bass and that sax. These interesting little added touches of like chiming, like I think percussive instruments in there that I'm picking up on, which is really interesting. Also, you get a little bit of ska, you get a little bit, as I mentioned before, this reggae dub thing, but as the title would suggest, there's something psychedelic about this as well. And I think for me, it's coming mostly in like the vocal track and how it is produced, and some of the song as well. In that there's like this echoey effect, and it feels like this weird like audio panning type thing going on where they're like accented bits of like accompanying vocal work or his voice echoed is coming from different directions. It's a little odd and hard to explain, but that's what gives it this kind of psychedelic feel. So the first three subgenres of, you know, dub, ska, and reggae are all kind of like sister subgenres, so it makes sense of kind of like blending those together. The psychedelic thing is the curveball, but it works here. It absolutely does, and it sounds really interesting.
Psychedelic crackers.
It's a grinding sound.
On a night like tonight, when I'm losing my hold, to break for the flames with my heart and soul, with my heart and soul, yeah. With my heart and soul, it is the
That bass.
At the edge of the nose where the lights are pretty, the change in the weather and the small bus to see the psychedelic, a psychedelic, a psychedelic. Oh, that is your atmospheric shot. Mama, this is psychedelic crackers. Willy, Baba, this is psychedelic crackers. Mama, this is psychedelic crackers. It's not what you really need. It's not what you really need.
I'm loving the added throughout all of this, but I just feel like I need to emphasize the added bits of like percussion throughout this, whether it's like these sort of taut sounding plonks on either rims or blocks, as well as other sort of auxiliary percussion instruments as well. I think I heard a bit of that like shaker slash almost grinding kind of sound. I can't remember the name of that instrument where you know kind of move the metal beads with the palm of your hand to create that frictious kind of sound, but there's some of that as well, and it's, I guess in a way that adds to the psychedelic feel as well, like all these interesting little sounds that you're catching and like plonks, like I don't know if this is like a marimba or xylophone or some other kind of instrument like that as well, but you hear those little slightly echoey plonks as well, and it's all really interesting and like inviting or engaging. It's really capturing those bits, and that walkabout bobbing kind of bass work is also very engaging and has got me the rhythm section firmly has me by the balls, so to speak. And then the bass is so playful. It's really nice. Oh, I don't know if I'm alone on an island here, but I don't know if there's a more sexy sounding instrument than a saxophone. I just love the way that sounds. It has this sultry nature to it. That harmonic guitar at the end that was kind of like seesawing, and then it just kind of stayed, just like almost like it was punctuation, just dotting, 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 and then you get that very interesting, as I mentioned, sultry sounding sax riff to kind of take us to the end. Yeah, this song for me was not so much about like some, and maybe John will be like, well, here are the lyrics and here are what they mean, and that will blow this whole, supposition of mine out of the water, or this feeling that I have. But to me, the song is like a vibe, and you can just kind of vibe out to it, which makes it fun and engaging and almost like hypnotic or trance inducing, especially with the rhythm section and a lot of that drum work. And speaking of the rhythm section, like the bass in this does a lot of really interesting stuff, but at its core, it kind of has this bobbing effect where it feels almost like one of those red and white, like line bobbers for fishing that kind of sits on the top of the water to indicate if there's some movement, below the surface. And there is some movement below the surface. This not because there's something on the end of the line, but because of the tide of the water moving, and it just kind of keeps everything moving, but in a fluid way, not in a stop-start, staccato or jolty kind of way. It's just rhythmic movement, and that is also, I think, lending itself to that trance-like effect where you just get sucked into it. The saxophone sounded fabulous in this. Obviously the bass was really interesting. I think another really important and interesting part of this song is all that auxiliary percussion work that I had stopped in the track to talk about for a bit there. There's a lot of different stuff happening. I definitely feel like there is the plonkings of marimba or xylophone or something like that, but there's other things as well, and that adds to the kind of psychedelic kitschiness to the whole enterprise that they've built here. So very interesting how they chose to inject some of that psychedelia into a genre or a sisterhood of subgenres that is not normally part of it, or you don't often hear it. I don't really affiliate psychedelic sounds with that of ska or reggae, maybe to some bit dub. But yeah, it was all a really fun and interesting listen. I would happily listen to this again, if for nothing else than the sort of endorphin mood kind of altering feeling that it provides you as it kind of all washes over the listener. So yeah, this is really good stuff. I'm interested to learn more. Maybe John can enlighten me as it relates to the lyrical content or meaning behind that lyrical content. But even if he's got nothing or there is nothing, the music is enough to keep one coming back for more. So let's go chop this up with the man himself.
Heavy Plant Crossing, he's back. So you've had a listen to Psychedelic Rockers, Dubweiser, by The Beat. What do you reckon?
I reckon a few things, and I will get into them. So, song begins, and it starts with what sounds like some slightly muted kind of guitar grinding through some riffage, and after a few seconds, it's joined by the drums who inject a little bit of that dub sounding quality via the beat that it provides, and the vocalist joins in and sounds really good, but I'm not catching what he's saying, though his delivery is very much cut from this sort of reggae cloth, which is great. But it does have a dash of something psychedelic about it as well. which also seems fitting given the title, even if on paper one doesn't immediately think of the sister subgenres of dub or reggae as psychedelia. And it's kind of like it's how his voice, I think, is produced than it is just the natural sound of his voice that comes off psychedelic. It's the echoey kind of stuff that they do with it at times, and it's also this God, it's weird to describe, but like the spatial sound of
Panning,
the
yeah.
yeah, it sounds like it's coming from different angles at times or distances, which I think lends itself to the whoa psychedelia kind of vibe that you get from it. Um, and just as I'm trying to key in on what he is singing, with a lot of failure, I'm distracted by the movement of this bobbing bass work that is working beneath everything here, and it yeah obviously becomes probably my favorite part of the whole song. Go ahead.
Just struck me. I'm going to say this later on anyway, but just do not worry, because every time you look up both Google search on even AI, it says Psychedelic Rockers is an instrumental track, and then anything you look up, it discounts there's any lyrics in it whatsoever. So what
How does it
I had
get
to
away
go
with
through.
such a brazen lie? no
I,
one,
and
no one jumped in.
one of the I used several different AIs to try and desperately find a. I didn't want to go through it and try and write down, which I had to in the end. One of them says you get the occasional phrase like psychedelic rockers, but that's about it. So don't worry about the lyrics.
That's funny. You didn't have to go to AI for that. That's exactly what I have written here because eventually I do catch on to a line, but lo and behold, it's the one that's the most obvious, which is the title.
Yeah.
So we get that bass line, and then in comes some lovely accented saxophone notes, which give the song a little kind of ska seasoning. But again, ska, dub, reggae, they all make sense together. The wild card is the psychedelic like value that you get from this track. Um, so finally, by the 50-second mark, I catch with certainty some lyrics. And they just so happen to be the title of the track as I catch him singing Psychedelic Rockers. And then he seems to inject a little bit of this stuttered delivery again, which adds to the oddity of the way the vocals are presented. So I thought that was really interesting. And there's also some echo effect in there as well. The sax comes and goes playing this, lovely little motif. And the singer emphasizes something about his heart and soul. That's another bit that I was able to latch on to. And we get treated to another portion where the singer repeats the title. And whilst, that's going on, I'm really keying back in on the rhythm section. It's kind of hard not to, with the bobbing bass line and the drums that continue to inject this sort of taut sounding rim or block strike throughout. And there is something infectious, albeit kind of subtle, about these tight plonks on the percussions that I'm drawn to. There's other, like, I don't know this instrument. I haven't touched one since I was probably in elementary school. But I think you hear it in Paranoid Android. It's that kind of thing where it's like metal wrapped around a cylinder and it creates this frictious kind of sound. I picked up some of that, some other auxiliary percussions. So in a way, while the beat proper is nothing crazy, as a whole, the percussions in the song are really interesting because of all the different things that are happening and devices that are being used and deployed in certain areas. There's also these like higher pitched, almost chiming like sounds peppered in throughout that kind of beg your attention. And just as as they sound off at the like 248 mark, the drummer rattles off this nice little snare roll that gives way to more sax that is kind of buoyed by the bass beneath it. And the whole rhythmic movement of this track at this point is starting to like paint this, how we love to draw comps from the physical world. For me, it is those red and white lure bobbers on your fishing line that sit on the surface of the water to let you know if anything's happening beneath the surface, and it kind of bobs like this if there's a decent current going on. That's kind of like what I felt I was becoming one of those as I was listening to this. Go ahead.
If you get a really fancy one of those, that's like a bulbous and's got multicolours. Do you know what it's called?
Huh.
It's called a Bobby Dazzler.
No shit. Okay, finally. There is a real world usage of this phrase other than describe something as fabulous or whatever you use it for. Great. Bobby
It's rather a
Dazzler.
waste, really, of that fantastic word, but there you go.
I'm gonna go buy one and then bedazzle it with jewels and gemstones and call it my Bobby Dazzler. That's great. So it's about at this point that I begin to discern that some of that kind of spatial plonking percussive work is likely being provided by a xylophone or a marimba-like instrument because the plonks are at that point really discernible. There's less going on, so I can really hone in on what they sound like, and that those are the instruments that come to mind. It's something within that family, for certain. The bass does some slightly higher than before Walkabout, before cutting out completely, and that leaves that dub beat to do its thing for a few seconds before everybody rejoins. And they continue to groove on this jam for a while. By the 5 minute mark, the drums then cut out, leaving the sax and bass to carry on for about 10 seconds. And then there are these sort of accented, tight brushes of harmonic work on the guitar. It's a very distinct sound. When you hear it, you know it. It almost makes the guitar sound chimey because of how
Yeah.
taut and brushstroked those strings are. So they add these nice little bit of seesaw kind of musical punctuation that then devolves from seesaw to more like aimed and dotted and less back and forth. It just becomes almost staccato in its delivery. And then that really interestingly enough gives way to this really beautiful, almost sultry, sexy flourish on the saxophone before things come to an end. And I had to give it up to the sax. I often do. I don't know if there's a more sexy sounding instrument in all of the world than a good saxophone. There's something about it. It's like the woodwind Barry White. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Tuba.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, tuba. That's it. Yeah, that's the big sister. You really want to get her number, but yeah, you got to start with the sax. That's your in. But no, all jokes aside, it is kind of has this Barry White kind of vibe to it. That instrument does, which gets my goose. So really, really enjoyed that. So yeah, there's this interesting blend of separate but familial subgenres in this, with the dub, the reggae, and the ska kind of cobbled together. But there's also this sense of, as the title would suggest, psychedelia. And that is probably the more interesting additive injected into this track. And it's, illustrated by the existence of some of the effects used throughout the track, particularly as I mentioned earlier, that echo effect and this trippy kind of audio panning that I sensed at times as well. And just the one thing that is inherently psychedelic, probably about all of the aforementioned subgenres outside of the psychedelic one, is the translate like effect that dub beats can have. You can just sort of find yourself falling into the rapidity of it, and I guess there's something psychedelic about getting wrapped up in a trance like state. That beat did offer that. So I guess in a way you can connect those dots, as interesting as they sound maybe initially on paper. So I liked it a lot and would happily listen to this again. I appreciate that, at least to me, given that this is an instrumental after all, that this was really a vibes song. I didn't need some interesting, intricate, well spun narrative to tell some profound story. This is kind of one that you can just put off, or pardon me, put on and fall into. And just that's how I experienced this, at least upon my first listen. Now, you might blow my mind and say that it's about X, Y, and Z, even though it's listed as an instrumental. But nonetheless, I really enjoyed it, perhaps for different reasons than I would have enjoyed some of the other stuff you've given me in the past, where it is the narrative that sucks me in, it's the storytelling. This is just more of the musical aesthetic and the vibes you get from it that kind of drew me in this time around. So tell me a bit more.
Yeah, thanks for that, Andy. I thought this is an interesting song because before I heard this, which was many years ago, I'd never drawn the comparison between dub and psychedelic. but it's quite clear that they do work kind of hand in hand. It's like the Caribbean version, a slow psychedelic, and obviously
Yeah.
not the sort of acid rock.
Yeah, and
stuff,
maybe
but
not as ham-handed as that 60s acid psychedelia.
Yeah.
But you're right. I had that revelation that you're talking about right now, 3/4 of the way into the song. Maybe by the end of it, I'm like, holy shit, I guess dub does, because of that trance effect
Yeah.
that I talked about.
It does, yeah, which is something I've not thought of. So I thought this was a really interesting example of a kind of creativity, especially seeing as this is from 1980, because it sounds so fresh, like it could have been done 5 years ago quite easily.
For sure.
Anyway, let's get into it. So the Beat, they're formed in Birmingham, England, in 1978, and known as ska, two-tone, dub, reggae, and post-punk. So interesting. I'll get to this straight away, just so you know. So although the Beat, their main fan base was in the UK, and they were very popular, they're also popular in Australia and had a sizable following in US and Canada, where they were known as the English Beat for legal reasons. So at the time, and pretty much at the same time, two bands called themselves the Beat. One in America, it was more sort of power pop, and then the Beat, which is sort of ska two-tone at the time. And they both established themselves in their own territories. And then the American Beat didn't really cross over to Europe at all. They were pretty unsuccessful. But the English Beat did, so they were known as the English Beat. For future reference, whenever I say the Beat, I'm talking about the Limeys, not the Yankees.
Okay.
So, personnel: Dave Wakelin, lead vocals, guitar; Rankin Roger, vocals, toasting; Andy Cox, and that's who you sort of heard, really. Andy Cox, lead guitar; saxophone; David Steele, bass. David Steele was the name of a very prominent politician in the 70s and 80s as well. Dave Blockhead Wright, keyboards; Everett Morton, drums; and then, not on this track, but joined a year later, Wesley McGowan, also on sax. So we've previously spoken about this when we were talking about the specials. The Beat formed in the same environment, the same area of the country, the same time, and the same background of really high unemployment and great social and cultural upheaval. And this was also really the start, coming out of punk, really, of the Caribbean sounds truly not just emerging, but mixing and influencing British music culture and creating something of their own rather than copying the Caribbean sound. Rankin Roger, he added a Jamaican vocal flavor to the band's sound with his toasting style. Jamaican saxophonist Saxa had a Jamaican ska instrumental sound. Saxa was born Lionel Augustus Martin in 1930, and he had played saxophone with Prince Buster and Desmond Decker in the first wave of ska in the late 60s. He joined the Beat to record their first single, which was Tears of a Clown, a cover version of the Smokey Robinson and the Miracles hit. It was released in November 79 on Two Tone Records. This is ticking all the boxes, and it reached number 6 in the UK chart. So it was and it's a decent cover, actually, it really is. Then their debut album, I Just Can't Stop It, was released in May 1980, entered the charts at number 3. So in with a bullet, as they say. And they supported the album with a tour in the States, along with Talking Heads and the Pretenders. So, and this is just because I really like the cover, I'll show you it. So this is the album. And they, like the specials, well, Two Tone did as well. They have like a little sort of illustrated character. This lady here, Pop Girl, and then on the back, I think that might be on the thumbnail.
It is, it very much is on the thumbnail.
And so that's the cover of this album, yeah.
Yeah. It's like a cartoon version of the actual album itself. Yeah, I can see it translate.
It is great. So this track was the B-side to the single Too Nice to Talk To, which was released in December 1980 and hit the number 7 spot on the UK charts. Just a bit about the A-side. It was a really great song, actually, but I just thought this was more interesting and different. So Dave Wakelin says the inspiration to Too Nice to Talk To comes from a nightclub in Birmingham called Barbarella's, where, in quotes, they used to have this dastardly trick at 2:20 every morning, because they closed at 2:30 in the morning. It didn't matter what was happening, whatever record was playing, they would just scratch the record off and turn on all the lights suddenly. And it really was a story about wanting to go and dance with somebody and just spending too long and going over in your mind what you say, what you ought to say, or having your friends going, go on, go and talk to her. And you waited for that long for it. You took a big breath, strode towards the dance floor, and then all the lights would come on, the record comes around, you go, okay, good night. And it's too late now. It's 2:20, and I spent all night just watching you. So that's quite fun.
Yeah,
Nothing
yeah.
changes, in 50 years, same thing. So yeah, both the A side and this were then re-released as dub versions with a parenthesis dub fighter. And originally there was as a standalone single, but in all re-releases of the second album, What Happened, had been put onto like the CDs and the re-releases, but that is the second album, which it is not on in the vinyl version. But there you go. Yeah, interesting stuff. So as I said before, bloody AI said there's no lyrics at all, so I had to go through and listen to it. And Roger Rank, I bless him, I love him. He's got a great presence. You see live stuff of him, but he's not the easiest to understand. And he's not trying to be, he's just throwing out sort of ideas, his toasting style.
Yeah.
So it starts original, derivative, sun sky. It's psychedelic rockers. Here, oh Lord. She oh, she oh, she oh, she oh, she oh, she oh, 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 oh. It's not a thought I could say. It's not a thought I could say. Tell you it's not a thought I could say. Show you it's not a thought I could say. Say atmospheric shock. Psychedelic rockers. Ma. Psychedelic rockers. Ma. Psychedelic rockers. Hold tight. Till me something or other. Psychedelic rockers to the very last drop. On a night like tonight when I'm losing my own, replaced with the flames, with my heart and soul, with my heart and soul. At the edge of the nerves where the lights are pretty, a change in the weather and moves past the city. Psychedelic rockers. It's not what you really think. It's not what you really think. This point I gave up, and thankfully it's pretty much instrumental. He stops toasting this point and then carries on to the end. So that's my approximation of what he said.
Yeah.
I'd say it's about 65% correct. But
that's pretty good considering what you're working with.
Yeah. So just continue the story of the beat, toured the world with such artists as David Bowie, The Clash, The Police, The Pretenders, REM, The Specials, and Talking Heads as mentioned, and members of the band often collaborated on stage with The Specials. They'd sort of get together during a gig. Their third album, Special Beat Service, got to number 21 in October 82, and the band split afterwards in 83. Dave Wakelin and Rankin Roger went on to form General Public, the band, and had a couple of hits in the US and Canada, whilst Andy Cox and Dave Steele formed Fine Young Cannibals with vocalist Roland Giff. Dave Wakelin nowadays fronts the US version of the group known as the English Beat and continues to play to this day. In the early 2010s, there was both an English version in the UK called The Beat with past members in, and an American version called The English Beat. And they were both touring on both sides of the Atlantic at the same time. It's the same band, same songs.
Yeah.
Just really interesting.
It is, especially when you consider how things started with the name situation and it being 2B, and then they ended up just going, you know what, let's just create another The Beat and it be a branch of our already existing beat. It just it's Beatception over here.
I can't believe that it took until 1978 for someone to think of The Beat as a band name. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
That's fair too. Yeah, exactly. Same with the band. It's like it was just waiting there to be plucked.
So Saxer, bless him, he was born Lionel Augustus Martin, died on the 3rd of May 2017 at the age of 87. So good innings. And then in January 2019, The Beat featuring Rankin Roger released a new studio album called Public Confidential. And the first single off the album, Maniac, was playlisted on BBC Radio 6 Music. Not long after going on surgery for 2 brain tumours and while undergoing treatment for lung cancer, Rankin Roger died at home in March of the same year, age 56. So clearly it was stacked against him at that point, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a pretty...
lung cancer.
pretty steep hill to climb with 2 tumors in your brain and then shit with your lungs too. That's
If it's a poker hand, you're folding.
yeah,
You
yeah.
really are. On the 8th of October 2021, drummer Everett Morton died in Birmingham at the age of 71, and keyboardist Dave Blockhead Wright died in October 2025. So I've got to a certain age, all of them, where they're starting to drop off. So Dave Wakeley's doing really well, front of the band in America, all that good living. That's where he's keeping it going. Listen, but they're really cool band. The Beat. They're sort of not quite as held in reverence as like the Specials, a Selector and things like that. But they did a really good job, and they're a few good hits. They also did a cover version of "Can't Get Used to Losing You" by Andy Williams, and it's just a really nice version.
Yeah.
But we'll see how this goes, and if people nostalgia hits, and if they do, I'll give you their other big one, which is "Mirror in the Bathroom," which I think is a great song. Really
Okay.
good sax in it as well. It's more sort of Scary based.
I'm sold. I hope it does well then, because I'd gladly check these guys out some more. I mean, I'll go back and listen to this song undoubtedly.
Yeah, and there's another song that is Stand Down Margaret. I wonder who that's about.
Hmm.
And it's really nice seeing them live. It's a bit like this. Well, I'll give you that video for the Specials.
Yeah.
It's the dynamics and all the energy and everything. It's just
Even the way you described how they would incorporate other musicians and stuff like that, it felt very communal, which is the exact vibe I got from the Specials video as well. Even if it was a little calamitous at times, it had to have been cool to be there. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, that's the thing, I guess.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right, I should wrap things up. Thanks for listening, Andy.
Thank you.
Folks, please, I say that, keep saying this. If you like this, do hit the like button. But in our sort of behind the scenes control of the channel, they've removed all the columns showing likes. So we've got no idea how many likes videos get nowadays. I don't know if they've stopped even bothering showing it on the videos as well. How many likes? Well, but go on, do it anyway, just for old time's sake. But do drop some comments, because we really want to know what you think about this song, the beat as well. They as well love to try and remember. Yeah, look forward to hearing your comments, reading them as well. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. We really appreciate everybody to support the channel. So please prop up 2 old geezers. They'll be your good deed for the day. That being said, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see all of you on the next episode of The Audio Files.
See you later, guys.